Our Story by the Quecreek Miners, Part 6. Chapter 16, The Longest Day. On Friday night, Governor Schweiker had predicted that one of the drills would complete the 245-foot shaft and break through to the miners by early Saturday morning. Like many of the governor's predictions, that turned out to be a little too optimistic. At 6 a.m. on Saturday, Dwayne Yost, the driller in charge of the rig on rescue hole number 1, was about 130 feet. Larry Winkler, the driller in charge of the rig on rescue hole number 2, was at about 145 feet. Given his late start, Winkler thought he was doing pretty well. The rig had come in from North Canton, Ohio on Thursday afternoon and had already popped down a 290-foot dewatering hole in a field about a half a mile away from the main rescue site. Winkler's crew was getting ready to drill another dewatering hole on Friday morning when David Hess of the Pennsylvania DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, told them to move their rig over to the rescue site. The bit in rescue hole 1 was stuck, and they wanted to get another hole going right away. So Winkler broke down the rig and moved over to the main rescue site, which was so jammed with people and equipment that it was, as Winkler puts it, all asses and elbows. Engineers directed Winkler's rig to a spot about 75 feet from rescue hole number 1. Winkler finally got the compressors and everything else he needed in place and was drilling by about 6 p.m. on Friday. By 7 p.m. he was already down 45 feet. Over at rescue hole number 1, Dwayne Yost was having his own troubles. After having a special tool fashioned at a local shop, the crew was finally able to hook the bit and haul it out at about 5 p.m. on Friday. Yost threw on another 30-inch bit, but for some reason it wasn't cutting correctly. He spent a few hours getting nowhere, then pulled it out, an hour-long process, and switched to a smaller 26-inch bit. That went much faster, but it was a bit of a risk, too. If the shaft wasn't perfectly straight, they'd have a hell of a time getting the 22-inch rescue capsule down there. Yost and Winkler couldn't help but feel like they were in a race against time and each other. They both were running nearly identical Ingersoll Rand drilling rigs that cost about $1 million apiece, and both were manned by 4-man crews round the clock. They wanted nothing more than to see these 9 miners lifted safely out of the ground, but professional pride was also at stake here. Winkler was at a slight disadvantage because his hole was bigger, a full 30 inches across. He had been drilling all night long, and after hitting a rough patch of limestone at about 100 feet, he was making good progress by the time Governor Schweiker came by for his early morning briefing. Still, he was nowhere near fulfilling the governor's prediction of reaching the miners by dawn. Knowing that he was going to face some tough questions at the fire hall, Governor Schweiker asked Winkler to come along and talk to the families with him. Larry Winkler. We got to the fire hall at about 6 a.m. I was very tired and had been working very hard and wasn't looking forward to this. But the governor asked, so I went. I could see right away that people were real concerned. It was pretty emotional. We all knew we were running out of time, but I just tried to explain to the families exactly what we were doing and why it takes so long to drill these holes. Drilling a 30-inch hole is not like drilling a 6-inch hole, you know. It's just a very tricky operation, and we were running into some limestone, which slowed things down. I said to them, you just have to be patient. There is nothing I can do to speed this up. If we try to rush, we're going to have problems. They understood that, but you know, it was tough. It was very tough. We all knew we were reaching the point of no return for these guys. We had to get them out. For the families in the fire hall, patience was a luxury they could not afford. They knew if Randy and his crew were not out of the mine in the next 12 hours or so, chances were exceedingly slim that they would ever see them alive again. Annette Fogel. At first you heard it was only going to be a matter of hours, or else you heard it would be 18 hours. Like Thursday it was 18 hours. So you figured Friday at the latest, and then you thought Saturday morning at the latest. Well, Saturday morning came and went, and it didn't happen. Then they would come in and say it's a couple more hours, and it just went on and on. So you got to the point where you wondered if when they got down there, if it was going to be in time and what they were going to find. Luckily, I have a wonderful family that kept me going, and there had been an article in the newspaper about some other miners who'd been trapped underground for 7 days. So I thought, if they can do it, these guys can do it. Randy had told me many times he had a good crew, and they had a lot of experience between them, so I was still hopeful. Then again, maybe I was just hoping he would come out so I could tell him that I loved him. That's the one thing I wanted. Those were the first words I wanted to say to him. Except for the pounding of the drills and the small team of big, busy men swarming around them, the rescue site was oddly serene on Saturday morning. A silvery mist rose off the green hay fields surrounding the rescue site and out along the dirt road that led to the rear of the site. A herd of cows chewed their cud. Groggy rescuers rolled out of the back seats of their pickup trucks, stumbling over to the food table in the barn for hot coffee. Doug Custer was out there fairly early, looking red-eyed and shaggy from lack of sleep. At the coffee pot there was a quiet disappointment about the lack of progress on the drill holes, but it was masked by a lot of talk about numbers. I just heard rig 1 is at 150. Just talked to the driller on 2, he's at 145. Anybody heard about how the pumping is going out back? I heard the water's down to 1833. This kind of talk was not just a way of marking progress. It was also a way of avoiding the one question everyone dreaded. Was there any way these guys could possibly still be alive? Everyone knew the water pumps were the key to the rescue. The only way to get them out safely and quickly was to get the water down. But the drillers were the stars. All day Saturday, a crowd of engineers, volunteers, and rescue workers sat on the bluff above the site, staring down at them with a certain kind of awe, watching these guys work, mud splattering all over them, refusing to break for longer than it took to chug a bottle of fruit punch, Powerade, the drink of choice at the rescue site. It was impossible not to think of the iron workers, firemen, and police officers who had dug through the rubble at the World Trade Center. Once again, lives depended on big muscle and big iron, and these guys with their T-shirts, tattoos, lips wadded with chew, were about as tough as they came. Saturday morning, John Weir took some families around so we could see things for ourselves. Oh, this is Leslie Mayhew talking. My cousin David and I went on one of those trips. First we went down to the pit and I seen how much water there was. By then it was pretty much pumped out, but I could see the marks where the high water had been, and they showed me the big pumps. Then they took me down to the drill site where we saw the 2 drills working. I walked right up to the drill rig and said, "Let me see how big this hole is." I couldn't imagine my dad and my husband coming out of a 26-inch hole. I was thinking that they were going to get down there and then they were not going to fit. I mean, Blaine wears 36-inch pants. How was he going to fit through a 26-inch hole? I mean, I wasn't thinking... Leslie was confusing circumference, how jeans are measured, with diameter, how the rescue hole was measured. I walked up and stuff was splashing and there was a lot of water and mud. I looked down into the hole and I'm like, all right, they can get out. It's big enough. That's one worry I had. But when I'm there, I'm in this daze. I can't believe I'm standing right on top of my husband and my dad. One of the guys on the drill rig, Brandon Fisher, happened to be a year ahead of me in school, and he turned around and saw me. He just said, "Is Blaine down there?" I said yes, and my dad. Somehow he already knew my dad was down there, and he knew I married a guy from Mayersdale that worked in the mine, but he didn't know they were on the same crew. And then Brandon just took his hat off and started sobbing. I said, "You just get him out, okay? Just get him out." In the early afternoon, Winkler noticed his drill was slowing down. Normally he would have pulled the bit up and checked it, but he was desperate to reach the trapped miners, so he pushed on. At about 3 p.m., when he was down about 200 feet, only 40 feet to go, he noticed the air pressure dropping on his rig. It was clear that it wasn't cutting, he says, but he wasn't sure why. He decided to pull the bit up as an exhausting procedure that wasted another precious hour. As the end of the drilling pipe came into view, he saw the problem. The bit was gone. It had snapped off. John Weir: I'd say that Larry Winkler is a man of the fewest words I've ever run into. During all this, he never spoke to me. He just gave me fingers all the time. How far they were down. That was how he communicated. He's a no-nonsense guy, just wants to get the job done and doesn't waste words talking about it. When that drill bit broke, he grabbed me and gave me a big squeeze. And Larry, he's a big guy. He was holding me so tight I thought my eyeballs were going to pop out. and he's just bawling. Now I lost it too. I looked around at all these guys on the rig, guys who were filthy, eyes red for working so long, guys who are tough as nails and probably take the beer caps off with their teeth. They're all in tears because they thought they let us down. But I told him, Larry, you didn't. He gave us what we needed to tell them people. He gave us feet, inches, when we really needed them. For the families, the constant up and down of hope and despair was wearing them out. In a way, their situation was worse than that of their husbands and sons trapped underground. At least Randy and his crew knew they were alive. For the families, it had been a 4-day-long roller coaster ride of desperate emotion, and some of them were ready to just jump off. Marge Mayhew. I went to the site on Saturday for a visit, and I totally lost it. I came back to the fire hall, and all I remembered saying is, my son is dead. You'll bring him up dead, and I might as well be dead too. If it wouldn't have been for my grandson, I probably would have taken a bottle of pills. It was at that point I went and I got a bottle, and I had intentions of swallowing them. My grandson David made sure I only took the one pill and went over and sat in the grass. And he put his arms around me and he said, Grandma, they'll bring him up. They'll bring him up. I just couldn't get it through my head he was coming up. Not alive, anyhow. Kathy Hillman. On Saturday, I decided that no matter what happened, Ron, Hound Dog, wasn't going back into the mine. So I asked if I could go up and clean his locker out and get his truck. I don't even know who I asked, but they said, well, you're not allowed up there. I said, it's my husband's stuff and I want it. So I talked to one of the preachers and he said, if that's what you want, I'll go and talk to them. So I went up to the mine and I asked for Ron's wallet and other things, and the guy there said, okay, I'll go get his wallet for you. I said, no, just bring everything out. He's not coming back here to work. He said, he's going to be okay, Kathy. I said, I just want everything. Leslie Mayhew. Late Saturday afternoon, I talked to my preacher about services for Blaine and my father. I said, I'm telling you now while I'm in my right state of mind, do both of them together, a double funeral. If they die together, they're going to be buried together. And I said, we're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate Blaine, and we're going to celebrate Dad. At this point, it had just been going on too long. My preacher told me to just keep praying, and I said, I've been doing that. Can you tell me they're going to come out alive? And he couldn't. So I said, well, I'm getting plans ready because if it happens, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it, and I don't want to worry about arrangements. I just want to take care of my kids. I want to just take care of my kids. By Saturday, Missy was the only family member still at the rescue site. The only two who stayed beyond the trips organized by John Weir had been Sandy and Missy, and Saturday morning Sandy went home to take a shower, but Missy refused to budge. She borrowed a camouflage military jacket from one of the Navy guys and spent much of the day pacing behind the barns with Doug Custer, both of them looking like they were on the verge of emotional collapse. Missy Filippi. Sometime in the afternoon, me and a friend went over to the barn to get some food. I had 2 pieces of pizza and a drink and a bag of chips. We went past a guy from the DEP, and my friend knew him, and we stopped to chat. I was standing a little ways away and wasn't really listening, but then I heard something that caught my attention. He said, Time is not our friend here. I said, what do you mean? And he said something about they missed getting them out 2 times. I don't know what he meant by that, and to this day I still don't. But he said it quite clearly, and I looked at him, and I was holding that plate, and I sat down in the chair, and I said, what are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me something? That they missed twice getting them out, and now you think they're dead? He just stared at me. Well, I knew time was running out, but I didn't realize that they thought they were dead by then. At about that time, I noticed Governor Schweiker over at the big blue truck they were using as a command center. I started storming over to Schweiker. My friend grabbed me by the arm and he said, Missy, stay here. You're not going to get nowhere if you go up to the governor and start cussing like a sailor. I said, well, what was that guy trying to say? They all think they're dead, don't they? Then I heard the state trooper saying something about body bags. And I don't know if they were prepping themselves for the worst or what, but at that point I was flipping out pretty good. On Saturday, the U.S. Navy was visibly present at the rescue site. They were, after all, experts in underwater rescue. They had trucked in 9 hyperbaric chambers, or depressurization tanks, in case any of the miners were to get the bends from a sudden change in pressure in the mine. The portable chambers were lined up in the barn right next to tractors and other farm equipment and looked like small blue space capsules. Behind the barn were several larger chambers which took up the entire length of a flatbed truck trailer. Although their presence was welcome and added an air of seriousness to the rescue operation, the naval officers looked oddly out of place amidst the drills, cornfields, and cows. They were dressed in sparkling white uniforms at a place where the real badge of honor was dust and mud. Missy Filippi. At about 8 p.m. I walked back behind the building where the Navy was set up, and there was the Master Chief, the top Navy officer at the scene. He was in his dress uniform and everything. I went up to him and I said, "Just what do you know about what the hell is going on around here now, Master Chief?" I did call him Master Chief, like that mattered. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, from what I hear, my husband is dead. They missed 2 chances and now he's dead." Well, the Master Chief started getting facial twitches. He wears glasses and his glasses were moving. He said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm getting ready to go talk to Geraldo and do an interview with him. You'll have to excuse me." And I said, "Oh, you are you? Why don't you give me a ride? Because I'm going up to the media center too." I told him, "Because I'm going to tell the whole United States that this big shot rescue team killed our husbands because they missed 2 chances and now they think they're fucking dead." He was twitching. I never seen anything like it. I'm thinking, "Missy, stop it." But I couldn't. And he said, "Well, I don't rightly know about that stuff." And I'm like, "Well, I'm telling you what, if my husband's dead, if they missed it or screwed it up, they're going to fucking pay." And I walked away and I went and found a cot behind one of them decompression chambers. I took an old blanket and covered myself the whole way up because I couldn't take it no more. This was a little after 8 p.m., I think, when I fell asleep. Chapter 17. Who Wants to Go Home? Hound dog. I couldn't take no more laying on that hard bottom. My hips and stuff was so sore, my back was hurting me and my feet was hurting me and everything. I said, if I got to spend one more night in here, I'm going to lose it. This is it. I can't take no more. I'm getting out of here one way or another. What the hell is taking them so long? I just can't understand it. I mean, I was getting angry. Boogie. He was bitching. Well, what are you going to do, hound dog? Then Harple starts talking about how his boys this weekend are going to a hunting safety course, both of them. They're 13 years old. He said, "I ain't going to get to see my boys hunt." I said, "Yeah." And I'm thinking there's a lot of personal things to think about not seeing the family. I got a nice long bearded turkey this year. I'm thinking that's my last bird. At least I'll die when I'm 50 years old. At least I got to see my family graduating on their own, which I always wanted to live to see. My kids graduate from high school, and I done that. I'm 50 years old, and I was sort of trying to cheer myself up in that category. And there's Blaine. Blaine was quiet a long time. Unger. On Saturday, Hound Dog went over the edge. He was going on, "I can't take another goddamn day, and this is bullshit, this is bullshit." And I said, "Well, what do you got planned? I don't see nothing coming in here to get us, Hound Dog. The other guys were telling me to calm down. They're doing the best they can. They're doing this, they're doing that. Okay, but I just still can't understand what's taking them so long. They're just drilling a hole. It don't take that long to drill a hole. I'm not a driller, but I could drill a hole faster than this." I had no idea what they were doing. I just didn't know if they were up there dicking around. I just couldn't understand why it was taking so long to drill a damn hole down through the ground. Unger. I told Hound Dog, it doesn't matter how much bullshit there is. We can't go anywhere until they come. Unless you got a big plan here, it doesn't look like we're walking out. The only thing we can do is wait. Blaine. When Hound Dog was ranting, I told Randy, another day of this and I'm going to kill him. Which was just a joke, but he was driving me nuts. It was nothing against him. He's a good guy. It's just his mind. He couldn't handle it no more. Harpo. I knew what Hound Dog was feeling. I think we all did. I'd had enough. My light was probably the best out of all of them, and I thought about going over into the old mine where the water come out, and I was going to venture around, turn my light out, and just look for a speck of light from somewhere. I was going to dig my way out of there because I was not spending another night in there. I couldn't take it. For Harpo, Saturday was pure hell. Not only was he cold, wet, tired, hungry, scared, and death-addled, and nicotine deprived, Saturday also happened to be his son Derek's 12th birthday. Harpo, it's Derek's birthday and I'm down here. I thought I might never see him again. I thought about all the things I should have done with my 2 boys that I didn't have time to do. You know, because I was working all the time and not spending as much time with my family as I should have. Still, Unger was right. There was nothing they could do but wait. So that's what they did. Flathead slept. Randy worried about his heart. Blaine did push-ups, 30 of them. Unger rubbed his shoulder, which for some reason was starting to ache badly. They wondered aloud if the guys at the other end of the mine had gotten out safely. They talked about sex and wondered if they would ever have it again. They talked about hunting and they remembered the big fish that got away. And they talked about life and how grateful and good they would be if they ever got out of there alive. Unger. To keep our spirits up, we talked about what we were going to do when we got out. We made plans, you know. Nobody had anything extravagant in mind. Harpo was going to have a cigarette and a beer and a chew. The cigarette first, and then the beer, and then the chew, I think was the order he was going to do stuff. I figured I was going to take a shower and go home and kick back and maybe pour myself a shot or something, you know, to kind of ease the tension, kind of unwind things. Tucker. I went down by the feeder. It has this little ledge on it like that where the coal car dumps. There was a little bit of coal there, and I just routed that out, cut me a piece of canvas, then went up to the bolter and got me an air filter. I took my hammer and bent it down in there a little bit, made like a lounge chair. I just laid back there, buddy. I'll lay there for a couple of hours, just wait and listen. At about 2:30 p.m., Yost's drill finally reached a depth of about 230 feet, roughly 15 feet above the floor of the mine. For the next 5 hours, he shut the drill down and waited. The water level was still a few feet above the magic elevation of 1,829 feet, which was the level at which the rescue officials decided they needed to be before they could safely open the hole into the mine. The water was going down about 6 inches per hour, Yost says. There was nothing to do but wait it out. Meanwhile, night had fallen, and under the bright floodlights, the rescue site took on a movie set glow. On the hill above the drill hole, the Sipesville Volunteer Fire Department was running through a last-minute rehearsal of how they were going to carry the men, dead or alive, up the hill to the medical staging area. Behind the barns, a long row of ambulances prepared to whisk the men off to the hospital in nearby Johnstown and Somerset. At about 8:30 p.m., Yost started drilling again. He took it very slowly, going down only a foot or two, then stopping the bit, blowing air and water through the hole to clear out the cuttings, then drilling another foot or two. Yost was afraid that if he didn't keep the hole clean, the bit might break through the roof of the mine and then get wedged in the shaft. It happens, rendering it useless to rescue the men. At the end, I was going down 6 inches at a time, taking it real slow, Yost recalls. The crew kept their eyes on the air pressure readings and the hydraulic gauge that showed the amount of weight on the drill bit. And when both gauges dropped, Yost knew he had broken through to the mine. At the rescue site, this was the moment of truth. After almost 4 days of roaring heavy equipment and chaos, everything was suddenly silent and still. They shut down all the air compressors, the drill rigs, the nearby water pumps. Rob Zaramiski, who works for a Pennsylvania manufacturer of industrial safety equipment, prepared to lower a slender little audio device. It looked like a microphone, but could both pick up and broadcast sounds, similar to a speakerphone, into the hole to check for signs of life. To make sure the miners could see it, they taped 2 glow sticks to the probe, one pink and one purple. Boogie. Suddenly the air quit. It was the loudest thing in the mine, and it quit. And I said, Hound Dog, go down there and tap on that pipe. Maybe somebody would happen to be going by the pipe. This is how we were thinking, like nobody's up there. Hopefully somebody might happen to be going by, and they might hear it, is what I'm thinking. He said, I'm going down, and Tucker got up and said, I'll go with you, Hound Dog. Hound Dog. So Tucker and I got up and went down to the air shaft, and they had cut the air. They had shut it off. It was dead quiet now. Tucker and I looked at each other. What's going on, I thought. They gave up. I said, Tuck, bang on that pipe. So he hammered on the pipe 9 times, and we put our hands against the drill bit to see if we could feel any vibration coming back. You couldn't actually hear them pounding on it up there, but you could feel it, and we felt them tap back. And just about that quick, zip, there it goes. They pulled up the bit back up through the hole. We're sitting there looking. It's gone. It's gone. It ain't there no more. I'm like, what the hell is going on? They must be quitting. They took the air shaft. They took the drill. They took everything. It was all gone. After they pulled it up, we're standing there a minute and you could hear pipes banging up there, like they were taking the drill apart and throwing them on the pile. So I said to Tucker, shine your light up that hole and see what you can see up there. So he did. He got his hat off, his light on his hat, and he's looking, and I say, do you see anything? No, I can't see nothing. Standing a few feet back from the rescue hole, wearing mud-splattered jeans and a bright yellow hard hat, Zarameski clamped on a set of headphones and listened. A team of 6 men slowly lowered the probe into the 6-inch air shaft. Zarameski called out over and over the words that the deep mine rescue team had told him to use. Can you hear me? Stay where you are. Then a few seconds later, can you hear me? Stay where you are. Zarameski listened, trying to block out above-ground noise and concentrate on the sounds coming out of the mine itself. Hound dog. I heard a hissing noise down there. It was coming through some cracks in the wall. I didn't know what it was. And I said to Tuck, is that air coming through the wall or what? He said, I don't hear nothing. He's still looking up through the air hole, trying to shine his light up there. He's hollering, hey ho, hey up there, anybody up there? I thought, I'm going down and figure out why that wall is hissing. Is there that much air pushing out behind that wall or what? So I took my hammer down and started knocking that top block out. And I got the top block knocked out, and I looked through, and as soon as I looked through, the water was just gushing out of the hole. The 30-inch hole that they drilled, the water was just pouring out in buckets, probably underground streams that they were drilling through. Tucker said, I'll be damned. So he came running. He looked through and said, there's the hole. He went ahead and started tearing more of the wall out so we could get through, and I said, well, I'm going up to get the guys. And so I walked up and poked my head through the canvas. Everybody's still sacked out. I said, hey, who wants to go home? Boogie, when he said that, we were like, no fucking way. No shit. Get out, man. And we jumped up. Let's go. God, let's go. John Weir. I wish I had a picture of Rob Zarameski's face when he dropped that probe down there. It was dead silent on the site. He was concentrating really hard. When he heard those voices down there, his eyes just popped out of his head. As soon as he flashed his thumbs up, I was out of there. I wanted to get to the fire hall and tell families and make sure they were the first to know. Chapter 18, Born Again. Sandy Poppernack. On Saturday evening, they told me it would be midnight until they actually broke through. Everybody said, why don't you go home and get cleaned up? Take the boys. I brought the boys home with me and they got their baths. I was brushing their teeth and the phone rang and my dad said, they're just getting ready to break through. I'm going to come out and pick you up. I said, no, I'll drive in. And he said, no, I'm going to come and pick you up. I was nervous. I was psyched that he was fine, but in the back of my mind I thought, oh God, how are they going to find those guys? What condition are they going to be in? I was in tears at that point. I was scared. I was brushing my son Dan's teeth and he started crying and he said, I just want Dad. I said, we're going to get him right now. We're going to go get Daddy. John Weir. After we got the thumbs up from Rob, Dave Rebuck and I hopped into the back of the police car. Out of all the state cops I know here, we got a rookie. As we were leaving the drill site, he actually said to me, which way do I turn? He had no idea where the fire hall was or nothing. I told him to take a right, and he just stepped on it. We must have hit 100 miles per hour. I'm not in a seatbelt, and I always wear a seatbelt. Dave is sitting in the back seat. The siren is on, and I said, hey, buddy, you got a double S turn down there. Slow this thing down. I don't want to die to go tell these people this. There were 2 drill rigs sitting down at the edge of Route 985, right down along there, and I thought we were going to kiss one of them as we went flying by. When we got to the turn for the fire hall, I said, right here, make a right. When he made the right, I'll tell you, his ass end was sliding. When she got straightened out, he pushed that sucker to the floor, not knowing the fire hall was just 100 yards or so ahead. And there's a little knoll. When he hit it, all 4 wheels was off the ground. We arrived with sirens on, and people were already running toward the fire hall. We skidded in there and jumped out. Sandy Poppernack. Dad came and the preacher came with him, and then we no sooner pulled into the fire hall than everybody came flying up to me. They said, get in there fast. They've got something they've got to tell you guys. I said, what's going on? And I lost it again, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I hyperventilated. My dad pushed me into the fire hall. Dan said he wanted to sleep in the car, so I left him behind there. The families gathered around Weir, waiting for the news. After having gone through so much in the last 77 hours, many of them could now read Weir like a book. They knew by the look on his face that he was not bringing bad news, but they did not dare let themselves believe it until they heard him say the words. John Weir. I said to the families, listen, I've been truthful with you people. You've got to make me one promise. You can't leave the fire hall. You've got to stay here until we get them out. Because, they were worried that there was going to be a stampede down to the rescue site. Then I said, we've got 9 alive. And the place went nuts. Annette Fogel. When that news came, it was cloud 9 in that fire hall. Oh man, it was shifting on its foundation. There was so much rocking and rolling. I mean, people were hugging people they never knew before. Let me tell you, you didn't care who you grabbed and hugged. It was unreal. Outside, some of the wives were crying, but not me. I said, turn on your radio. I want to dance. Then I decided, heck, I didn't need any music. I'm just going to dance. Sandy Poppernack. I gave a sigh of relief. Everybody was my dad was crying. I probably cried harder knowing my dad was crying. I can't tell you when I last had a hug from my dad, but it was a good feeling. And poor Dan, he had to get out of the car during the stampede of everybody running in, and he couldn't get in. He was being pushed. They were almost knocking him down. But when he got in there, I grabbed him and hugged him and said, Daddy's okay. Daddy's okay. Blaine Sr. I was hugging and kissing people I never seen in my life, and then I went up to the governor and hugged him. Missy Filippi. I was still asleep at the site when this guy from the Navy, Doug Bennett, a super nice human being, jerked me up off that cot. He said, Missy, they're alive. I remember it was 10:29 p.m. because I had a hold of his arm and I looked at his watch and I said, are you sure? And he's hugging me and he's like, yes, yes. Underground, the joy and chaos and confusion mirrored what was happening in the fire hall. Boogie. Most of us couldn't see, it was so damn dark, and our lights were almost burned out. We all beat it on down to this hole. Hound Dog took us down, We're looking through this hole and the water is just pouring out. And I said, that's it, fellows. That's where we're getting out. Then all of a sudden, here comes this doggone thing down through the 6-inch. We're like, what the hell is that? This scared the hell out of me. It had 2 big pink and purple glow sticks attached to it. It's a damn telephone. Flathead. I grabbed it. It wasn't exactly a telephone. I think they called it a probe. It was laying in the mud, and I picked it up and said, hello, hello, anybody there? Then all of a sudden it started crackling, and this fellow said his name and said he was with the rescue team. He asked how we was doing and the condition of everybody. I told him we had Randy with heart trouble and John with his shoulder, and I think Tucker with his heart, and they wanted me to describe the area of the hole where the shaft came through to make sure the cage would fit. And he asked me, is there anything you want to know? I said, yeah. Is our families up there? And he said they were at the fire hall. Then he asked about the other guys, if they had made it out. Then I asked about the other guys, if they had made it out, because the whole time this was going on, we was worried about the other guys down below. We thought, man, I don't know if they made it. But he said, yeah, they made it out. And I told the other guys who were down there with me, and they were yelling, great! And we were all happy, really happy. This was a high point, a real high point. Then the guy asked, is there anything you want? I said, yeah, some snuff and food. And then somebody yelled, beer! And I said, yeah, send some beer down too. But of course they wouldn't do that. Then I had to give Randy's weight and height and description and all that. And he told me that since Randy's the biggest one and the one that was hurt, he should come up first. And he said, don't tell him he's going because he's hurt. Tell him he's the biggest man and the biggest man has to go first. So that's what I said. Hound Dog. They sent down wool blankets and flashlights and some hat lights and candy bars and water and snuff. We unloaded it out of the cage there and spread it out there, not too far from the cage, but back a ways. And we got into everything. Brand new wool army blankets. They were in plastic. Boy, them things was nice. I opened one up and wrapped it around me and said to Boog, "Boy, I'm going to take one of these. I'm going to sneak it out when we get up there." So Boog grabbed one and wrapped it around him and said, "Yeah, they are nice." They shipped down some raincoats too, and I put one on. My light was real dim, almost dead, so I grabbed a flashlight. I took a chew of snuff and then got a drink of water and ate a candy bar. It all happened a little too fast, and I didn't feel good. Boogie. At first they couldn't get that damn rescue capsule to come down. It took like 3 or 4 tries and it stuck. And we're thinking, what's next? They can't get the thing down? We don't even know what it looks like. Somebody said, "We'll send instructions down how to get in." I thought, no, I'm not going to read no instructions. We'll figure it out. So we're waiting for this damn thing to come down. I looked at Harpo and Hound Dog and said, "I'll tell you what, guys, when we get out of here, I ain't going to no hospital. When we get up there, somebody's going to have a pickup truck around. We'll jump in the back and get a ride over to the fire hall where our families are at." And that's what we were thinking. Like, we'll just get a ride home in a pickup truck. Hound Dog said, "Do you think anybody will be there for you, Boog?" I said, "I don't know. It's pretty late. Hell, it's after midnight." I said, "I don't know if Cindy will be up this late or not. And my parents are probably in bed. You know, they go to bed real early. So I don't know if anybody is going to be there for me or not. Maybe not." Then Harpo said, "I ain't going to no hospital either. We'll get on the back of the pickup truck. We'll go get a shower. We'll go over to the fire hall and we'll see who's there." So that was our plan. Unger. They finally got the capsule down and we told them we wanted to send Fogel first, except he didn't want to go. "Tell you what we're going to do," I told Fogel. "We're going to send your fat ass up there first. If you get stuck up in there and they drop you back down, I'm hitting you in the head with a rock and rolling you out of the way." And I told him, "We ain't messing around now, so you better get this thing up there. We want out of here. We don't have time to be bullshitting around here, man." Randy. I didn't want to go first. That wasn't the deal, you know. But they were all pretty persuasive, so I got in the cage. It was a tight fit. There was water pouring down. I put the headphones on and they started to haul it up. "They were talking to you all the way. I heard the guy say, 'You're at 150 feet. How is it?' I said, 'It's fine. Just get me up there.' And when I got to the top, it was like 4th of July. I mean, it was an emotion like you can't even explain." Flathead. Shh. While we were talking to them on the probe, they had asked us, "Do you realize how many people are up here?" I said, "There's probably going to be, you know, your normal rescue team." And they said, "There's thousands of people up here and you're worldwide on TV." I relayed that message to the other guys and it was like, holy shit. When it was my turn to go, I grabbed the bit bucket with the notes we'd written. I wanted to be sure that we didn't leave that behind. Harpo. When I hit the surface and they pulled me out of the capsule and put me on the stretcher, I just heard people yelling, "Harpo! Harpo! Harpo!" I threw my hands up in the air and said, "God bless America." And then I was whisked off. They cut my clothes off me faster than I could put them on and take them off myself. Quickest bath I ever had in my life. It felt good. Boogie. I helped load the guys into the capsule. It was wet, water pouring down. We were getting drenched. I just throwed the guys in. Hound Dog is like, "How the hell do you get in this thing?" Of course, he hadn't watched Randy and Blaine, the first 2 guys who went up. None of them watched. They were bullshitting along the rib. So I opened the gates, swung around, and then there's a platform you fold down. And I said, "Just get in." He got in head first. Most guys went in sideways. I said, "That's good." I shut the gate. "Am I all right?" he asked. I said, "Yeah, put the headphones on." I told Mo, who was on the phone, to go to the guys above. "Take him up, Mo." And he went up backwards. Hound Dog, when them lights hit my eyes, it hurt. My pupils were big from that many days in the darkness, and then getting out in the bright light, they just didn't get smaller, I guess. They were letting so much light in I could just barely open my eyes. It was so blinding. When I got up there, I could see people, but I didn't recognize them or nothing. I have no idea who was there or anything when they helped me out of the cage. They didn't ask me nothing. They took me in there, cut my clothes off, clear down to my boots. Within 30 seconds, I was naked and they were hosing me off. Tucker. When they grabbed us, there was no discussion. It was just like grabbing a kid when they're first born. They just cut your boots off and your underwear. I was a little nervous. I mean, they was down close to the privates there, and they was whacking them. And I said, "Buddy, whatever you do, just be a little careful because I ain't got much left down there." At the firehouse, families gathered around the TV, watching the men being lifted out of the ground. After they'd learned that their loved ones were alive, they had voted to allow the live broadcast of the event. Had they decided against it, the rescue certainly would not have been broadcast. Governor Schweiker had left the final decision up to the families. After each man came up, someone at the rescue site would call over to the fire hall to let them know who was coming next, so the family members were sure not to miss it. Annette Fogel. I'm outside waiting to hear who's coming when. My son Matthew told me he'd come and get me. When I heard that the first guy up was going to be the one with chest pains, I thought that would be Tom Tucker because of his past history. Then Matthew came running, his hands waving, and he said, "They brought Dad out. They brought Dad out." And I looked at him and said, Your dad's the one with chest pains?" We were told they were flying him to Johnstown Hospital. A preacher came out and told us we could go, but to drive carefully. I wasn't too worried about the chest pains. After what we had been through, I figured we could deal with it. Marge Mayhew. I was just sitting there in the fire hall when they announced that the second miner to come up would be Wayne Davis. I had no idea who Wayne Davis was. There wasn't a Wayne Davis down there. They just screwed up. Then they said, Blaine Mayhew. And I was like, oh my God. The rescue went swiftly and smoothly. By 2:30 a.m. on Sunday, there were only 2 men left underground, Boogie and Mo. Sandy Popernak. I knew Mo, would be coming up last. I knew he wanted to make sure everybody was up. This guy behind me said, I know it's going to be Boogie. I turned around and said, I'll bet you it's going to be Mark. Boogie. So it had come down to me and Mo. I looked at Mo and I said, Mo, go ahead up. I'll be okay. Mo looked at me and he said, Bob, you go. I said, no, you go. He said, I'm okay. I said, are you sure? I ain't going to ask you twice. I'm getting the fuck out of here. He said, go ahead, I'll be all right. So I shook his hand and I said, I'll see you upstairs. That's the last time I talked to Mo. Mo. After Boog left, I was alone down there. I took a look around. I cried a little bit. Then I asked the guy on the radio. I wanted to make sure my wife and kids weren't up there. Well, I couldn't make sure they weren't up there. But I didn't want them to be up there because I knew when I seen them I was going to lose it. By then I had a pretty good idea what was going on up top. Every time somebody surfaced, it was just like being at the Super Bowl when somebody got a touchdown. I mean, you could hear them screaming, hollering, and clapping. When they got up there, I knew this was going to be a serious emotional problem. When I was waiting for the cage to come down, it was really quiet. I never felt anything like it in my life. This guy's talking to me on the radio, and I just kind of, I didn't even answer him. I could hear him saying, are you still there? Are you still there? I was just looking around at the mine, the gear we left down there, just reflecting. I was thinking this was maybe my last time in the mine. I looked at this stuff and I thought to myself, man, I hope I never see anything like this again. When the capsule came down, I got myself in and they started pulling me up. As I was rising, I was looking at the strata. There's sand, rock, there's slate. I've got my finger out touching it. Water is pouring over me. I could hear the roar of the people above. I was just enjoying that last ride. John Unger. They life-flighted me and Randy Fogel down to Johnstown Hospital in a helicopter. Randy because of his heart, and me because my shoulder was hurting pretty bad. On my flight, there was this really great nurse. After she had me all strapped in and my IV in place and everything, she said, can I get you anything else? I said, there's only one other thing I'd really like to have. And she said, whatever it is, if I have it, I'll do it for you. And he said, I'd like to have a nice, soft, warm woman to hold right now. She goes, what? I said, that's what I'd really like to have, just to hug a woman. She smiled. She said, you spent 77 hours in hell and the first thing you think about is a woman? And he said, hey, that's not asking for too much, is it? And she laughed. Chapter 19, Reunion. Missy Filippi. I was still at the rescue site waiting for John, Flathead, to come up. I couldn't see what was going on. I was just waiting out where the ambulances were, trying to keep out of the way. One of the rescue workers came up and said, is your husband bald? I didn't know how to answer because his hair's getting a little thin. But I was thinking, oh my, what happened to his hair? And I said, well, not completely. And they said, never mind. I think they confused my husband with John Unger. I did chuckle a little. Then one of the women on the ambulance crew said, Missy, he's coming, get ready. And I climbed in the back of the ambulance. I was only there for a minute when they brought him in. I had a hard time seeing him at first because there was this seat between us, And when I went to lean up and my seatbelt stopped me, so I clicked it off. He was kind of rolling his head around, jerking a little bit, and they had him so covered with blankets, you know. I could see the IV line running down there, but I couldn't see anything else below his neck and shoulders. I was afraid to touch him. They said something about his eyes, how they might be hurting from the light. I wasn't sure what to do. And I said, "Can I touch you?" Because I was afraid, because his head kept rolling around like that, and I didn't know why. And he said, "Yeah." And then he started crying, and I started crying. And I put my hand on his head and leaned down close to him, and I said, "You're never, ever, ever going through that again. Never." Leslie Mayhew. When I walked into the emergency room and first saw Blaine, he looked like hell. They hadn't put him nowhere yet, just right there behind a curtain. His face was drawn in and the color was bad. His hands were gray. He was cold. I mean, like hypothermia cold. I'm a nurse. I've worked with people that were dying, and I knew his temperature was not right, not even close. His feet were gray and cold and had all these wrinkles from being in the water too long. All I was allowed to do was grab his hand because they were giving him oxygen and doing all this other stuff with him, checking his temperature. I reached down to kiss his hand. The first thing he said was, "It has to be a miracle that we made it out. If you only knew the stuff we went through." Of course, I had no clue. The second thing he said was, "I'm not going back in, ever." And I thought, well, I would never would make you. I'd never want you to. And the third thing he said was, "How are the kids holding up?" Of course, I had to joke around. Don't ask about me. That's okay." It wasn't until later that night that Blaine saw the kids. David, his nephew, brought him clothes and brought the kids up. They had a hard time getting through the media to get into the hospital. When Blaine saw the children, they didn't act the way he thought they were going to act. They were excited, but they didn't show it because they thought he was gone. You know, they thought their dad was dead. Then they were sort of afraid to touch him at first. They heard he was going to be cold. They heard people talking about hypothermia, but they didn't know what the word was. So that first day or two, they weren't themselves at all. It sort of scared me. I think they were in shock for a while. Harpo. My wife and my 2 boys came to see me in the emergency room. They said, "Dennis, we all love you." And then my wife gave me a kiss. And she told my boys, "Give your dad a kiss." It was just a very happy moment in my life. Boogie. When I seen my family walk in, I bawled like a baby. That's the only time I cried. It was particularly hard when I seen my boy Ben. He hugged me. He said, "Dad, promise me you won't go back to the mine." I couldn't promise him. I didn't say because I have to live and pay my bills. That's the only thing I know. He asked that twice, crying and hugging me. "Promise me you won't go back." I couldn't. My girls, they didn't even make me promise. They just said, "Dad, you're not going back in that coal mine." And my girlfriend, Cindy, she said straight out that she'd break up with me if I went back in the mine. She didn't pull no punches. Hunger. When my family walked in, it was overwhelming. I was thinking I'd never see them again. My wife came in, and then my son and daughter. There was a whole pile of people there to see me. My wife said, "I never gave up. I just made my mind up that I know what you're all about, and if anybody was coming out, I knew you'd be there." I said, "Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but there was a time in there that I wasn't sure I was going to get the job done that you thought I was going to be able to do." But that's the way my wife is. She's a strong woman. I mean, what she endures, she's just a remarkable person. I've never met anybody as strong as she is. Annette Fogel. Randy had coal dirt in his ears, coal dirt under his nose, in his mustache. He had 2 pieces of cotton over his eyes to keep the light out. The whole family went in, but they just kind of backed off and left me to do what I had to do. So I went up there to say those 3 words I had forgotten to say to him that morning when he left. "I love you," I told him, and I gave him a kiss. I took my time, I held his hand, and then I let the kids come in, and my pastor came in and said a prayer. He sat with us and prayed with us and thanked God for their safe return. On Sunday, while America celebrated their courage and their brotherhood, the miners slept. Randy, Tucker, Unger, Flathead, Harpo, and Boogie were all at Conemaugh Memorial Medical Center in Johnstown. Blaine, Hound Dog, and Mo were at Somerset Hospital. It was a blissful day. They had spent more than 77 hours in a tight, black, cold hole in the ground, and now they had been delivered to a warm, white hospital bed. All they wanted to do was grab a wad of chew, kiss their wives and children, close their eyes for the next 10 hours. Governor Quecreek made the rounds, catching some of the miners between snoozes. By now, he and Blaine Mayhew, Sr., were on a first-name basis. All the shouting and worrying and second-guessing were forgotten. Tucker. The governor came in there and made me feel good. He said, "We'll take care of you. There aren't going to be no problems with anything." That was good to hear. We watched a little NASCAR together. The governor is a big fan, you know, and wants to do some racing himself. And like 2 laps into the race, there was a heck of a crash. Earnhardt and another guy plowed into the fence. I mean, cars went flying and rolling. And I said, "Now why in the heck would you want to go and do something like that? Get yourself killed." He said, "I like driving race cars." And I said, "Well, buddy, good luck to you. I'll come down and watch you if you get a little time." By late Sunday, Hound Dog, Harpo, Boogie, Flathead, Blaine, and Mo were all released. Given the ordeal, these guys were in amazingly good shape. Many of them, especially Mo, still had some pain and numbness in their feet, but that would go away soon enough. They had all lost weight. Tucker dropped 12 pounds. Their skin was still soggy. Boogie had a badly bruised thumbnail where he had hit it with a hammer, but they were ready to go home and begin their lives again. Hound Dog. The first night I came home, Kathy and I laid there in bed together, and she wouldn't let go of me for about 2 hours. I almost forgot how good it felt. Doctors were a little concerned about the pain in John Unger's shoulder. After being examined by Navy doctors, they decided he should undergo oxygen therapy in a hyperbaric chamber. That meant sitting in an airtight steel container for 6 hours while it was pressurized with oxygen, then slowly depressurized, a common treatment for excess nitrogen in the bloodstream, which causes the bends and can lead to a variety of serious health problems. Unger was not happy about being trapped again, even if it was only for a few hours. I was hot and tired and real wore out. I just wanted to get out, but it did help my shoulder. It felt a lot better after that. He was released on Monday and immediately went home to his 80-acre farm outside of Somerset. Both Tucker and Randy remained in the hospital for cardiac evaluations. On Sunday, Randy's heart began racing at one point, reaching 240 beats per minute, a development that for a few hours had doctors worried. But it turned out they were able to get it under control with drugs and various tests, showed his heart was to be in fine working order. It was just a reaction to the tremendous stress he had been under. Randy was released late Monday. Tucker was the last to go home. With his history of heart trouble, doctors wanted to be sure everything was in good working order. He underwent a stress test, echocardiograms, and procedures to check for blocked arteries. Nothing alarming turned up, but they kept him around until Tuesday afternoon, just to be sure. When they arrived at home, every one of these men walked into a new world. 4 or 5 days earlier, they had been simple coal miners, men who labor under incredibly difficult and dangerous conditions to put food on the table for their families, and in a few cases because they loved the work itself. When they emerged from that 26-inch shaft in the ground, they were different men. They met and shook hands with the President of the United States, who praised them for their American spirit. Their faces and names were now known by millions of people around the world. They were celebrated for their camaraderie, their stamina, their survival skills, their common sense, and their just plain good luck. Offers came pouring in, box seats at Pittsburgh Steelers games, private jets to NASCAR races, and yes, book and movie deals. It was a big adjustment, and it would not be an easy one. In their future, there would be TV appearances, parades, parties at the governor's house, and Miss America pageants. But there would also be nightmares of water and drowning, a federal investigation into whether what happened in the Quecreek mine could have and should have been prevented, and worries about what they were going to do next in their lives. Governor Quecreek promised to help them in their job hunts. Most of the guys have no plans to ever go back in a coal mine, and are damn happy about it. But for Randy and Mo, it's not so easy to say goodbye. They love the rough poetry of work underground. Despite what happened, they both want to figure out a way to put their many years of experience to good use, perhaps as mine inspectors or superintendents. But even Mo, a third-generation miner, is adamant that neither Daniel nor Lucas will ever work in a coal mine. Not that they'd ever want to after all this, Mo says. Like the other guys with young kids, Mo gets a little glassy-eyed as he thinks about how the trauma of this event will affect his kids' lives. As for the farewell notes that were written in the mine, none of them have told their wives or families what they wrote, and they don't plan to either. The bucket is in Randy's possession now, and he's taking very good care of it. Someday soon, he says, he will take it back down into the mine, right back up to the spot where Mo cut through, and he will place that bucket up in that old mine as far as he can reach. Then the engineers will seal it up, entombing their most private thoughts written in their most desperate hour. But on that hot July night, when the 9 miners finally emerged black-faced from the ground, all this was still in the future. What was important at that moment was simply the miraculous fact that they had gotten out, born again, with the rarest gift of all, their lives. Randy, when I was in the hospital, I couldn't see the sun come up. I could see the daylight, but I couldn't see the sun. When I came home, I got up early that next morning. I went outside and sat on my bench on the other side of my garage and read a book, a Tom Clancy novel. I wanted to watch the sun come up. It's just something I thought I might never see again. Just that little thing. I mean, it happens every day, but when you're down in the darkness for a while and you don't know if you're ever going to get out, well, you realize that little thing that happens every day, just the sun rising up over that hill, that's what it's all about. The end.